welcome. I'm back with another video where I show you how to set up a notebook to track knit and crochet projects. And if you're new here, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Abby and I'm the maker and the designer behind Sew Homey. I am so excited to have each and every one of you here with me today. We are going to spend some time making our own journal, and I'm so excited and I hope that it's of interest to you. So specifically, this journal is for knit and crochet. However, if you're not into these crafts, it's my hope that you gain inspiration from this video and that you can grab some of these ideas and incorporate it into a notebook of your own for a different hobby. I actually did this. I was watching a video on how to make a sewing journal by Elizabeth from The Plant-Based Bride. I was so inspired, heavily inspired. I literally watched that like 2 or 3 times, and then I went to the store to buy my own notebook and I got started immediately. Her video is amazing. I'll link it in the description box below so that you can watch it and gain inspiration from her as well. With it being the beginning of a new year, it's that time where we start to plan for the upcoming months. And I myself have been doing this and setting goals, all that jazz. And I have a lot of plans and a lot of pattern ideas that I would love to launch this year, but I have to stay organized in the meantime and keep myself on track. So that's the motivation behind this video and this journal. So you'll see me working solely in this notebook. This is where I plan to keep track of all of my projects, knit or crochet, in every stage of completion. And then I just want to mention briefly for any other designer out there, or if you're looking into getting into designing, I think that this is very important. I'm actually not going to cover this notebook in this video. If it's something that you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. So this one's, like I said, is tracking all of my projects, and this one is basically just my brain dump. This is how I'm going to keep track of all of my patterns and all of my ideas that I have. And normally, I would have a stack of papers this high with all of this. So I'm trying to condense it and put it into one notebook. So I'll just show you the first page briefly. I've been working on spring collection. So I've been writing, description, inspiration ideas, words. And if you've seen any of my videos before, you'll notice this one. I've shown it in a couple, and it's a little sneak peek of a wall hanging shelf idea that I'd love to launch this spring. This is how I'm going to try to keep track of all of that brain dump, and then I will use that in conjunction with my pattern book where I keep track of all that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the making of this notebook. I am using a Navy Exceed A5 bullet journal, which I picked up from Walmart. It was literally the only one that they had available at that time, and since I was too impatient and I wanted it immediately, I did not take the time to search for one online, but I do know that there are a lot of good ones out there that are available, so I encourage you to look around for one that fits your needs. So as I flip through this, you're going to notice that I am skipping the index pages, and I'm doing that on purpose. I'll go back after I add some projects and all that jazz, but I will use it later, just not in this video. That's why I'm skipping it. But we'll go ahead and start with the title page. So on the right hand side, it says Knitting and Crochet Journal, and I will put all of that within a thin black border. And you'll notice as I work through this journal, it's pretty minimalistic. I didn't want it to be too complicated or anything that I really had to maintain. I wanted it to be very easy to use and set up for all of my projects. So you'll notice that I use a lot of straight lines, simple fonts, just nothing complicated at all. Now on the opposite page, I drew a sheep knitting a scarf. Now I'm not the best artist out there, so I did have to look up a drawing of this. I searched something similar to that, like sheep knitting, I don't know, something like that. But I needed a visual to help me draw this, and I found one that was very similar, and I did take it and I put my own spin on it. So I didn't copy it completely, but I mainly just wanted something cute but not too difficult to draw. And overall, I am happy with the end result. Now in the next few pages, I set up the fundamentals portion of this video. So these are things that are often in the beginning of knitting and crochet pattern books, but you can also find these on the Craft Yarn Council website in their standard section. So it encompasses all of those things that you could memorize, but why if you can just look it up. So I plan to use these as resources. It's, just set it up one time, but use it all the time. So I started with the yarn weights on the left side. These are based on the yarn weight standards that are set by the Craft Yarn Council. You can find this on yarn labels in the US, and they have a numbering system that starts with 0 and it goes up to 7. 0 being the thinnest weight and 7 being the thickest. And they also have a description, which is what I call category in this spread, and that corresponds to the weight. So 0 corresponds to lace, meaning that it is the thinnest yarn, and then it goes up to super fine, fine, light, medium, bulky, super bulky, and jumbo. And then breaking that down even further, the last column, which I call types, is basically other common terms for the same yarn weight. So for example, number 4, or the category medium, is also called worsted, Afghan, or Aran. It kind of just depends on where you're at in the world and what common terms are used in that part. So this will come in very handy when you are knitting or crocheting a pattern that's designed by someone that lives elsewhere and they use different terms for the same type of yarn that you use, but you're just not used to that term. So it'll be easy to look up on the spread. On the next page, I have all of the crochet hook sizes and knitting needle sizes that you could ever imagine. Again, I got this from the Craft Yarn Council website, which I forgot to mention earlier, but I'll make sure to link it below. That way you can have easy access to all of the links that I used. So on the left-hand column of both crochet hooks and knitting needles are the millimeter ranges. So they start from the smallest and they gradually go up. And on the right-hand side is the US size ranges that correspond to the millimeter ranges. I don't really plan to use this spread as much because all of my knitting needles and crochet hooks have either the sizes printed or etched on there, but I do think that this will be handy if I need to convert from the US size, if that was given in a pattern, to the millimeter size, or vice versa. Now moving on, this next spread is one of the most practical to have in a knitting and a crochet journal. I think that this one will get used quite a bit, but the next couple of pages house all of the abbreviations for both knitting and crochet. So I started with the crochet abbreviations, as you can see on these pages. I gathered all of this information from the Craft Yarn Council, just copied them down. And each of these are the common terms used in patterns as well as the proper convention for abbreviating these terms. So this is super useful if you are just starting out in crochet. Now I did go for a very simple format. I already sketched it out. As you can see, I wrote it all out in pencil so that I could just go over it with a pen. I had to see if I had enough room on just 2 pages because whenever we get to the knitting abbreviations, you'll see that it extends a lot further than the crochet abbreviations. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough room, so that's why you see me just going over it in pen. So I went for a very simple format. It's alphabetized, so it's easy to find what I'm looking for. Then you have the abbreviation, and next to that is the term that the abbreviation is used for. Now if I flip the page, it will look the exact same. The only difference is the abbreviations are totally different from crochet. There are some abbreviations actually that are used for both, but the majority of the knitting abbreviations are niche to knitting. That's why it's essential, for me at least, to have them separated. Now, if I'm knitting, I know where to consult, and then if I am crocheting, same thing. So this spread is really handy if you are new to either craft. It's good to write them all down to become familiar with them. And honestly, I knew just about all of the crochet abbreviations since I've been doing it much longer, but there were several knitting abbreviations I have never heard of nor used in a pattern. So it was a total learning experience for me, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's also very useful if you are in the design world. So if you need a quick resource to remind you of the proper abbreviation or the proper description of a term, this is just as useful. Just flip to the page and find what you're looking for. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next section, which is measurements. This is a very practical spread so that I know what size pattern to make, or I can also use it as an easy visual of what measurements I need to take for a given pattern, especially if I'm making this for somebody. Now, I tried to think of all the measurements I could possibly need for a pattern, but if I missed something, please let me know in the comments because I don't want to forget anything important. I started by drawing the outline of a female body. I was able to do this through a tutorial on YouTube. Again, I'm not the most artistically talented person when it comes to drawing, so that was a lifesaver. I think it turned out well. I'll link that video for you if you need a guide as well. They also are printables. You can purchase those through Etsy and use them to trace, so definitely look around if you need a guide just like me. I just decided to freehand it with that tutorial, which ended up working. Once you have the body drawn, then you can mark the different places that you need for measurements to complete patterns successfully. I started from the head and worked my way down to the feet. And then to the left of the body, I made the table that houses all of the information. So on the far left, I have the label that goes from A to P, and this corresponds to the next column, which is a description of the measurements on the body. So for example, I have label A, and that corresponds to the head, which you can find on the diagram, and you can see what part of the head that I measured. And then in the last two columns of this table, I will put my own measurements in inches and centimeters, and this way I won't have to find a measuring tape every time, or I don't have to remember my measurements because I always seem to forget. So I can just flip here, find the measurement I need, and go on my merry way, which I'm looking forward to because this will be very important and handy whenever it comes to choosing sizes for the patterns that I want to make. So I don't know if you noticed, but the letter P, which is the last one, I just drew a big box, and then I decided to expand that box onto the right page. I have added more detail to the foot because if you've watched any of my previous videos, you will know that I make a lot of socks and I love it. So I wanted to incorporate a diagram that shows exactly what measurements you need to knit or crochet a pair of socks successfully. It is also one of my goals to knit every person in my family a pair of socks. So if I want to do that and ensure that it actually fits, I can just snap a picture of this and send it to my family member and just have them fill it out. I'll just make sure to do that way ahead of time so that they forget that I did that. I do think that this spread will get a lot of use because, again, I can't ever seem to remember my measurements. So this will allow me to not have to remember. I can just look it up and use this resource. Flipping to the next and final page for this video, we find my project spread. So this is going to be the spread that I create every time I start a new project. It's going to be the hub for everything related to that project so that I can stay organized and be prepared for the future if I decide to recreate that pattern. So on the left side, I'll keep track of all of the information that I could possibly need to know about the pattern. I'm sure I left something out, so if you find something important that should be there, please let me know in the comments. I want to know so I can improve and I can add this to future spreads in this notebook. So before I get into more detail on what this page is for, I am just outlining the different placeholders that I want to have for the different sections that I want to keep track of for each pattern. The pattern name will go at the top of the page. And then off to the right, I don't know if you can actually see this, but I penciled it in. It says by, and that is to remind me to add the designer's name so that I don't forget who that pattern was by. Directly below that, on the right side is the description. So this is going to keep track of little things that I want to know, like the skill, was it knit or crochet? The construction, was it top down? Was it toe up? Was it cuff down? All those different things. And then underneath that, I also have size because different sizes come with those patterns. Directly below that is the list of supplies. I went ahead and added 2 supplies that I know for sure I'll need for every single pattern. The rest will differ from pattern to pattern, but the first I want to keep track of obviously is the hook and needle size. Then under that, I also want to know the yarn and different things about the yarn. So what brand did I use? What was the weight? What colorway? How much did I actually use? And then the fiber content. We'll go ahead and move over to the right side, which says notes. And I left this as the biggest section because I anticipate I will have the most information to write here. But underneath that, I already wrote in gauge, and this is because you want to keep track of this for every single project that you do. But I went ahead and put it in the notes section because gauge can differ, and if it is different than what's in the pattern, then that's also going to change different aspects of the pattern, like the rows and the stitch counts. So I wanted to keep that in the notes section just to accommodate for that. And then directly below that, at the bottom, I have the start and the finish dates. And that's just gonna be to remind me of when I started it and when I finished it. So whenever I flip back through that book, I can be reminded of those times. This is also going to be valuable whenever I want to see how long it actually took me to make this project. And then on the right side, you will notice that there is a blank page. I left this open for a number of reasons. One, I have a Polaroid camera that doesn't really get used as much anymore, so I want to have a plan maybe to photograph my finished objects and I can put them into this journal. But I also left it open so that I can write the pattern if I wanted to keep track of that, or I can sketch the pattern if I don't want to take a photo. I just wanted to leave it up to my creativity, so I left it blank so I can decide for each project. This was quite the project for me. It took a lot of time and thought to set up this notebook, and luckily all but the project spread were pages to set up one time but use forever as a resource. I tried to keep it super simple so that I can continue to use it for all of my projects. Now, it will take some time to set up each project spread for the new projects, but honestly, I'm not upset about that. It gives me time to really go through the pattern and get to know it so that I can copy it into my notebook. I can be a little more intentional about the projects I choose. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, whether you are a knitter or a crocheter or not. If you do have your own knitting or a crochet journal, or maybe you've had thoughts of making one, I would love to know what you include. Just let me know in the comments down below. And then if you're not a knitter or a crocheter, I totally understand. And it's my hope that you gained inspiration from this and that you can create your own niche notebook. So if this was something of interest to you, please hit that like button. And I want to thank you so much for your support and for watching this video. In between this one and the next video, you can catch me on Instagram. I'm always up to chat about knitting, crocheting, yarn-related things, or just life-related things. And I'm also available through Etsy and Ravelry. Thanks again. I hope to see you in the next video.